Samuel 1. There was a certain man from Ramah of Zophim, on Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zoph, an Ephraimite. And he had 2 wives, the name of one was Hannah, and the name of the second was Peninnah. And Peninnah had sons. But Hannah did not have children. And this man went out from his city, on the established days, so that he might adore and sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh. Now the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, priests of the Lord, were in that place. Then the day arrived, and Elkanah immolated. And he gave portions to his wife Peninnah, and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave 1 portion with sorrow. For he loved Hannah, but the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival afflicted her and vehemently distressed her, to a great extent, for she rebuked her that the Lord had closed her womb. And she did so every year, when the time returned for them to ascend to the temple of the Lord. And she provoked her in this way. And so, she wept and did not take food. Therefore, her husband Elkanah said to her, Hannah, why are you weeping? And why do you not eat? And for what reason do you afflict your heart? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? And so, after she ate and drank at Shiloh, Hannah rose up. And Eli, the priest, was sitting on the seat before the door of the temple of the Lord. And since Hannah was bitter in soul, she prayed to the Lord, weeping greatly. And she made a vow, saying, O Lord of hosts, if, in looking with favor, you will see the affliction of your servant and will remember me, and will not forget your handmaid, and if you will give to your servant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall pass over his head. Then it happened that, while she multiplied prayers before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. For Hannah was speaking in her heart, and only her lips moved, and her voice was barely heard. Therefore, Eli considered her to be drunk. And so he said to her, How long will you be inebriated? You should take only a little wine, but instead you are drenched. Responding, Hannah said, By no means, my lord. For I am an exceedingly unhappy woman, and I drank neither wine, nor anything that can inebriate. Instead, I have poured out my soul in the sight of the Lord. You should not repute your handmaid as one of the daughters of Belial. For I have been speaking from the abundance of my sorrow and grief, even until now. Then Eli said to her, Go in peace. And may the God of Israel grant you your petition, which you have begged of him. And she said, I wish that your handmaid may find grace in your eyes. And the woman went on her way, and she ate, and her countenance was no longer changed for the worse. And they rose up in the morning, and they worshipped before the Lord. And they returned and arrived at their own house at Ramah. Then Elkanah knew his wife Hannah. And the Lord remembered her. And it happened that, in the course of days, Hannah conceived and bore a son. And she called his name Samuel, because she had requested him from the Lord. Now her husband Elkanah ascended with his entire house, so that he might immolate to the Lord a solemn sacrifice, with his vow. But Hannah did not go up. For she said to her husband, I will not go, until the infant has been weaned, and until I may lead him, so that he may appear before the sight of the Lord, and may remain always there. And her husband Elkanah said to her, Do what seems good to you, and stay until you wean him. And I pray that the Lord may fulfill his word. Therefore, the woman remained at home, and she breastfed her son, until she withdrew him from milk. And after she had weaned him, she brought him with her, along with 3 calves, and 3 measures of flour, and a small bottle of wine, and she led him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. But the boy was still a young child. And they immolated a calf, and they presented the boy to Eli. And Hannah said, I beg you, my lord, as your soul lives, my lord, I am that woman, who stood before you here, praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord granted to me my petition, which I asked of him. Because of this, I have also lent him to the Lord, for all the days when he shall be lent to the Lord." And they adored the Lord in that place. And Hannah prayed, and she said, Samuel 2. My heart exults in the Lord, and my horn is exalted in my God. My mouth is enlarged over my enemies. For I have rejoiced in your salvation. Nothing is holy as the Lord is holy. For there is no other beside you. And nothing is strong as our God is strong. Do not continue speaking of great things, boasting. Let what is old depart from your mouth. For the Lord is the God of knowledge, and thoughts are prepared for him. The bow of the powerful has been overwhelmed, and the weak have been girded with strength. Those who before were filled, have hired themselves out for bread. And the starving have been filled, so that the barren have given birth to many. But she who had borne many sons has become unable. The Lord brings death, and he gives life. He leads away to death, and he brings back again. The Lord impoverishes, and he enriches. He humbles, and he lifts up. He raises up the indigent from the dust, and he lifts up the poor from filth, so that they may sit with princes, and take hold of a throne of glory. For the hinges of the earth belong to the Lord, and he has placed the globe upon them. He will preserve the feet of his holy ones, and the impious will be silenced in darkness. For no man will prevail by his own strength. The adversaries of the Lord will dread him. And over them, he will thunder in the heavens. The Lord will judge the parts of the earth, and he will give dominion to his king, and he will lift up the horn of his Christ. And Elkanah went away to Ramah, to his house. But the boy was a minister in the sight of the Lord, before the face of Eli, the priest. But the sons of Eli were sons of Belial, not knowing the Lord, nor the priestly office for the people. And so, no matter who had immolated a victim, the servant of the priest would arrive, while the flesh was still cooking, and he would take a three-pronged hook in his hand, and put it into the vessel, or into the cauldron, or into the cooking pot, or into the pan, and all that the hook lifted up, the priest took for himself. So they did to all of Israel who arrived at Shiloh. In addition, before they burned the fat, the servant of the priest would arrive, and he would say to the one who was immolating, Give me the flesh, so that I may boil it for the priest. For I will not accept cooked meat from you, but raw. And the one who was immolating would say to him, First, allow the fat to be burned today, according to custom, and then take for yourself whatever your soul desires. But in response, he would say to him, By no means. For you will give it to me now, otherwise I will take it by force. Therefore, the sin of the servants was exceedingly great before the Lord. For they drew men away from the sacrifice of the Lord. But Samuel was ministering before the face of the Lord, he was a youth girded with a linen ephod. And his mother fashioned a little tunic for him, which she brought to him on the appointed days, ascending with her husband, so that he might immolate the solemn sacrifice. And Eli blessed Elkanah and his wife. And he said to him, May the Lord repay to you offspring from this woman, on behalf of the loan that you offer to the Lord. And they went away to their own place. Then the Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and bore 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the youth Samuel was magnified with the Lord. Now Eli was very old, and he heard all that his sons were doing to all of Israel, and how they were sleeping with the women who were waiting at the door of the tabernacle. And he said to them, Why are you doing these kinds of things, very wicked things, that I have heard from all the people? My sons, do not be willing. For it is no good report that I am hearing, so that you would cause the people of the Lord to transgress. If a man has sinned against a man, God may be able to be appeased over him. But if a man has sinned against the Lord, who will pray for him? But they did not listen to the voice of their father, that the Lord was willing to kill them. But the youth Samuel advanced, and grew up, and he was pleasing to the Lord, as well as to men. Then a man of God went to Eli, and he said to him, Thus says the Lord, Was I not revealed openly to the house of your father, when they were in Egypt in the house of Pharaoh? And I chose him out of all the tribes of Israel for myself as priest, so that he might ascend to my altar, and burn incense to me, and wear the ephod before me. And I gave to the house of your father all the sacrifices of the sons of Israel. Why have you kicked away my victims and my gifts, which I instructed to be offered in the temple? And why have you given more honor to your sons than to me, so that you eat the first fruits of every sacrifice of my people Israel? Because of this, the Lord God of Israel says, I have spoken clearly, so that your house, and the house of your father, may minister in my sight, even forever. But now the Lord says, may this be far from me. Instead, whoever will have glorified me, I will glorify him. But whoever despises me, they will be despised. Behold, the days are arriving, when I will cut off your arm, and the arm of the house of your father, so that there will not be an old man in your house. And you will see your rival in the temple, amid all the prosperity of Israel. And there will not be an old man in your house for all days. Yet truly, I will not entirely take away a man of you from my altar, but such that your eyes may fail, and your soul may melt away, and a great part of your house may die out, as it pertains to the state of men. But this will be a sign to you, which will happen to your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, on one day they both will die. And I will raise up for myself a faithful priest, who will act in accord with my heart and my soul. And I will build a faithful house for him. And he will walk before my Christ for all days. Then this will be in the future, that whoever will have remained of your house, he will approach so that he may pray on his behalf. And he will offer a coin of silver, and a twist of bread. And he will say, permit me, I beg you, one part of the priestly office, so that I may eat a mouthful of bread. Samuel 3. Now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was precious in those days, there was no manifest vision. Then it happened that, on a certain day, Eli was lying in his place. And his eyes had dimmed, so that he was unable to see. And so, to prevent the lamp of God from going out, Samuel was sleeping in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. And the Lord called Samuel. And responding, he said, Here I am. And he ran to Eli, and he said, Here I am. For you called me. And he said, I did not call. Return and sleep. And he went away, and he slept. And again, the Lord continued to call to Samuel. And rising up, Samuel went to Eli, and he said, Here I am. For you called me. And he responded, I did not call you, my son. Return and sleep. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not been revealed to him. And the Lord continued, and he called to Samuel still a third time. And rising up, he went to Eli. And he said, Here I am. For you called me. Then Eli understood that the Lord had called the boy. And he said to Samuel, Go and sleep. And if he calls to you from now on, you will say, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Therefore, Samuel went away, and he slept in his place. And the Lord came, and stood, and he called, just as he had called the other times, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And the Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I am accomplishing a word in Israel. Whoever will hear about it, both his ears will ring. In that day, I will raise up against Eli all the things that I have spoken over his house. I will begin, and I will finish. For I have foretold to him that I will judge his house unto eternity, because of iniquity. For he had known that his sons acted shamefully, and he did not chastise them. For this reason, I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of his house will not be expiated, with victims or with gifts, even forever. Then Samuel slept until morning, and he opened the doors of the house of the Lord. And Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli. Then Eli called Samuel, and he said, "Samuel, my son." And responding, he said, "I am here." And he questioned him, "What is the word that the Lord has spoken to you? I beg you that you may not conceal it from me. May God do these things to you, and may he add these other things, if you hide from me one word out of all the things that were told to you." And so, Samuel revealed to him all the words, and he did not hide them from him. And he responded, "He is the Lord. May he do what is good in his own eyes." And Samuel grew up, and the Lord was with him, and not one of his words fell to the ground. And all of Israel, from Dan even to Beersheba, knew Samuel to be a faithful prophet of the Lord. And the Lord continued to appear in Shiloh. For the Lord had revealed himself to Samuel at Shiloh, according to the word of the Lord. And the word about Samuel went forth to all of Israel. Samuel 4. And it happened that, in those days, the Philistines assembled to fight. And Israel went out to meet the Philistines in battle, and he made camp beside the stone of assistance. But the Philistines went to Aphek. And they positioned their troops against Israel. Then, when the conflict began, Israel turned his back to the Philistines. And they were cut down in that conflict, in various places in the fields, about 4,000 men. And the people returned to the camp. And those greater by birth of Israel said, "Why has the Lord struck us today before the Philistines? Let us bring to ourselves the ark of the covenant of the Lord from Shiloh. And let it enter into our midst, so that it may save us from the hand of our enemies." Therefore, the people sent to Shiloh, and they brought from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, sitting upon the cherubim. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were with the ark of the covenant of God. And when the ark of the covenant of the Lord had arrived in the camp, all of Israel shouted with a great clamor, and the land resounded. And the Philistines heard the voice of the clamor, and they said, "What is this voice of a great clamor in the camp of the Hebrews?" And they realized that the ark of the Lord had arrived in the camp. And the Philistines were afraid, saying, "God has entered into the camp." And they groaned, saying, "Woe to us! For there was no such great exultation yesterday, or the day before. Woe to us! Who will save us from the hand of these sublime gods? These are the gods who struck Egypt with all the plagues, in the desert. Be strengthened, and be manly, O Philistines. Otherwise, you may serve the Hebrews, as they also have served you. Be strengthened and wage war." Therefore, the Philistines fought, and Israel was cut down, and each one fled to his own tent. And an exceedingly great slaughter occurred. And 30,000 foot soldiers from Israel fell. And the ark of God was captured. Also, the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died. Now a man of Benjamin, rushing from the troops, arrived at Shiloh on the same day, with his clothing torn, and with his head sprinkled with dust. And when he had arrived, Eli was sitting on a seat opposite the way, gazing out. For his heart was fearful on behalf of the ark of God. Then, after this man entered the city, he announced it to the city. And the entire city wailed. And Eli heard a sound of the outcry, and he said, "What is this sound, this tumult?" And the man hurried, and he went and announced it to Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes had dimmed, so that he was not able to see. And he said to Eli, "I am the one who came from the battle. And it is I who fled from the troops today." And he said to him, "What has happened, my son?" And responding, the man reported and said, "Israel has fled before the Philistines. And a great ruin has happened to the people. Moreover, your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, also have died. And the ark of God has been captured." And when he had named the ark of God, he fell from the seat backwards, toward the door, and, having broken his neck, he died. For he was an old man of great age. and he judged Israel for 40 years. Now his daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant, and her delivery was near. And upon hearing the news that the ark of God had been captured, and that her father-in-law and her husband had died, she bent down and went into labor. For her pains rushed upon her suddenly. Then, when she was near death, those who were standing around her said to her, "You should not be afraid, for you have given birth to a son." But she did not respond to them, and she did not notice them. And she called the boy Ichabod, saying, "The glory of Israel has been taken away, because the ark of God was captured, and because of her father-in-law and her husband." And she said, "The glory has been taken away from Israel, because the ark of God had been captured." Samuel 5. Then the Philistines took the ark of God, and they transported it from the stone of assistance into Ashdod. And the Philistines took the ark of God, and carried it into the temple of Dagon. And they stationed it beside Dagon. And when the Ashdodites had risen up at first light on the next day, behold, Dagon was lying prone on the ground before the ark of the Lord. And they took Dagon, and they set him again in his place. And again, on the next day, rising up in the morning, they found Dagon lying on his face upon the ground, before the ark of the Lord. But the head of Dagon, and both palms of his hands had been cut off upon the threshold. Moreover, only the trunk of Dagon remained in its place. For this reason, the priests of Dagon, and all who enter his temple, do not tread upon the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod, even to this day. Now the hand of the Lord weighed heavily upon the Ashdodites, and he destroyed them. And he struck Ashdod and its borders at the inner part of the buttocks. And in the villages and fields, in the midst of that region, mice rose up and burst forth. And this caused a great tumult unto death in the city. Then the men of Ashdod, seeing this kind of plague, said, "The ark of the God of Israel shall not remain with us. For his hand is harsh, over us and over Dagon, our God." And sending, they gathered together all the princes of the Philistines to them, and they said, "What shall we do about the ark of the God of Israel?" And the Gathites responded, "Let the ark of the God of Israel be led around." And they led the ark of the God of Israel around. And as they were carrying it around, the hand of the Lord fell upon every single city with an exceedingly great slaughter. And he struck down the men of each and every city, from the small even to the great. And cysts were festering at their buttocks. And the Gathites took counsel, and they made for themselves seat covers from pelts. Therefore, they sent the ark of God into Ekron. And when the ark of God had arrived at Ekron, the Ekronites cried out, saying, "They have brought the ark of the God of Israel to us, so that it may kill us and our people." And so they sent and gathered together all the princes of the Philistines, and they said, "Release the ark of the God of Israel, and return it to its own place. And let it not kill us, with our people." For the fear of death fell upon every single city, and the hand of God was very heavy. Also, the men who did not die were being afflicted in the inner part of the buttocks. And the wailing of each city was ascending to heaven. Thank you for watching. If you like the content on this channel, please press subscribe, the like button or comment below. We'd love to get your tips. See you next time.